Warning. You are entering a restricted area. Return to where you came from, or be destroyed.
You're heading your way towards the useless nerdy knowledge. Please do not go any further. If you will not comply, you will hear a nerd rambling.
Nerd alert!
Get those nerds! Nerd! 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 Exterminate!
Go ahead, make my day.
Bazinga!
I'll be back.
Greetings, fellow podcast listeners. Welcome to another great episode of Useless Nerdy Knowledge. I'm your host, Ben, and here on today's episode, I'm going to try something a bit different I haven't done. It's not entirely anything too special per se. It's just, I guess, kind of a little experiment I want to try. So what I'm going to try and do is try and maybe like speculate what the movie of the upcoming movie that I'll see as of this recording in in a few hours. Of the upcoming new Monsterverse movie, Godzilla and Kong, or Godzilla X Kong, whatever you want to call it, the New Empire. So I'm really excited to see this. I've been waiting pretty much ever since, like, I think toward the end of last year, from when it was like the teaser or even the trailer came out. So obviously, with the Monsterverse, ever since pretty much just about 10 years ago. In 2014, when the 2014 Godzilla remake came out, people were, a little bit skeptical, being like, well, is this going to be like the 98 version where it was, bad and absolutely garbage? But it surprisingly did well, but then looking back, people were like, well, maybe it wasn't as good as we thought. Then with then they decided to, Legendary get the rights to Kong, just so they could finally have a possibility of like a shared connected universe, kind of like how Marvel basically did that in a way. And of course, with the 2014 Godzilla movie, it wasn't even meant to be a connected universe. It was just one of those things where they're like, "Yay, you know what? That's kind of a good idea." They were bringing more money and all that stuff. And I'll be honest, it was a clever idea. So then, after Kong Skull Island made some good money, Godzilla King of the Monsters, I think, did fairly okay. Didn't do as well, I don't think, both like, from like a critic's opinions and all that stuff, but who cares? It was a movie made for the fans, basically. And of course, it kind of unfortunately was around when, like, Avengers Endgame was also in the theaters, so it had some pretty steep competition there. But thankfully, we got to eventually get our remake, I guess you would call it, of Godzilla and Kong fighting each other in Godzilla vs. Kong. Of course, I want to say that it kind of came at the best of the worst times when COVID was like still in full effect, but I think it definitely dipped people's toes back into the movie theaters to be like, you know what, maybe we do want to go back to the movie theaters because just it's just more fun that way, and it was a fun experience. So we finally got that, and ever since Godzilla vs. Kong came out, after it was like released in theaters and then it was on physical media or you could watch it on streaming or whatever, people were just thinking, what's to come next, and people wanted the Monsterverse to continue, and I was on board for that, being like, yeah, sure, let the Monsterverse continue, yeah, why not? So what we kind of got was a Netflix anime series of Kong, of like a Kong animated series. I'll be honest, I cannot remember if it was like canon. I want to say that it is, but I'll be completely honest, even though like when I watched the show, I didn't really pay attention that much, and honestly, it wasn't too interesting. Unfortunately, the Gamera anime series on Netflix was a lot more entertaining. I think it was just called Skull Island, if I'm being completely honest. Like, the artwork of it seemed fine, but overall, the entire like story or whatever you want to call it just wasn't exactly too good. But anyway, and then for some weird reason, Apple TV Plus managed to get the rights to, I guess, just to make a Monsterverse TV series, but I just always found it odd of how, like, Apple TV Plus was like, yeah, sure, we'll take this Godzilla TV show and just turn it into, whatever, I guess. I don't know. But, when I saw like trailers for Monarch Legacy of Monsters, I was like, okay, I'm pretty hyped, but I'm never going to get Apple TV Plus. Now, of course, I have been able to watch some of it, but I'll be completely honest, and I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, and I don't care because this is my opinion. I didn't like the show. I'm sorry. I just thought that it was just extremely, extremely boring. Now, I get it. This is a whole origin story of like Monarch or a continuation of like when Monarch happened after the 2014 Godzilla, but it was just so dull and boring for me, and the characters were not that good, nor were they necessarily memorable, and the whole relationship plot point or whatever the heck was just absolutely terrible. And I'll be completely honest, Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt were too good for this show. I'm sorry, this show was just extremely boring. There's 10 episodes of this show. They barely show Godzilla or any of the monsters, and it focuses more on the humans than it does any of the monsters. It's basically like if Godzilla 2014 had a continuation, but it was like a TV show. And I'll be honest, the only things that I did like were pretty much any of the Godzilla scenes, but at the same time it was disappointing because they would just go, "Oh, look, there's Godzilla," and then just cut away from it immediately. Even Kong had like brief cameos in there at the very first episode, and then the end being like, "Oh, big friggin' whoop." And I'll be completely honest, I think this is just a show where you really won't be missing anything. And the only other thing that I did like is how both Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt were basically the exact same character, just like a few years apart. I think that was actually a nice concept that I don't think I've ever seen in any other movie or show. I could be wrong, but I don't know. I'd have to look back on something like that. But it's just that the entire show was just so boring for me, and I just absolutely did not like it. It's like I was so hyped for it because, like, even some article I saw or whatever it was saying like the creators or the directors or producers or whoever of Legacy of Monsters said that you can never have too much Godzilla, and I'm just thinking, well, you're not wrong, but how come he's barely even in the show? Now, again, I understand of how it's like, focusing more on the humans and the whole Monarch legacy and all that, but it's like, it's also called Legacy of Monsters. Show more of the monsters. We don't care about the humans. Nobody cares about the humans, unless this is the first Godzilla movie ever made, or freaking, Godzilla minus one. That's a different story. But with something like this, ever since the first 2014 Godzilla movie, nobody cares about the humans. Not to mention the fact there's a bit of a PC scene, I guess, plot point in there that honestly just shows up out of nowhere and then just kind of never comes back. It's like, okay, that was pointless, but I'm not going to get all into that. I don't want to ruffle feathers from either side. But anyway, the point is that I just really didn't like the show. I don't care what critics or audiences think about it, giving it a, 89%. I don't care about Rotten Tomatoes. I just don't give a crap, okay? But it was just so boring and very disappointing. Now, there are going to be talks that it will, like, a second season's in the works, and I guess that's fine, but just do something entertaining with it. Like, seriously. Like, even when they show the new monsters, they seem cool, but they barely show any of it, which is really disappointing. Now, I don't know what else to say about it, other than it was just so boring, and I'll be completely honest, after 10 episodes, I was lost and was completely uninterested. Not to mention the fact that some of the acting in it from certain actors were just not too good. I'm sorry, it was just one of those things where I just didn't really care for it. I just hope that they either improve it, show more action, show more monsters, or what. But again, this is just one of those things where it's like you really didn't need to watch this because, if I'm being honest, you're not really missing a whole lot. This literally came out after Godzilla vs. Kong, so you're not really missing anything. It's not like there's anything important. I think it probably hints out at Apex Cybernetics to hint at Mechagodzilla, but it's like, I don't even know if we need that because we already saw him. But anyway, what my main thing is here, I mainly just wanted to touch upon those briefly because I think I mentioned them at one episode where I was just like, oh yeah, I'm probably going to talk about Legacy of Monsters, and I never fully did, mainly for that reason, because I didn't like it. But of course, at the same time, I completely forgot to mention the anime series of Skull Island. But anyway, my whole take of this entire episode mainly is just my whole opinion and review on Godzilla and Kong the New Empire. Now, of course, it'll be a few hours before I see it as of this recording, but I wanted to give some like brief thoughts, maybe speculation, or even like whole things of what I might think of before I go and see the movie. So obviously when the teaser came out, I was absolutely psyched, absolutely pumped up, and like just like seeing all these different things in the teasers or in the trailer, being like, whoa, what is this? And even seeing like the toy line of like the Playmates Godzilla Kong toy line, it's just like, whoa, what is this? Who is this? What? It just looks so cool. Of course, I have heard from like a couple people or even like some people that I know being all like, oh, they're making him too cheesy and to be like a superhero. And I guess I could see that, but again, it's just one of those things where it's like, Godzilla can be serious, Godzilla can be, silly or whatever. I think it's just going to be entertaining regardless. I don't care. Now, I have seen like some controversy before, of course, of how when the trailer first came out, it showed Godzilla basically like evolved, where he's like all pink and has like all these different like spines like on his shoulder, and even like a kind of a stegosaurus like tail on his end of it, on the end of his tail. And of course, there's all that whole controversy and of how countless memes I've seen of like Godzilla and Kong running toward the camera, and lots of people hate that and Godzilla being pink. Now, I think I can understand, like, probably having Godzilla be a different color, especially pink, is kind of weird, and people probably didn't like that just because he's always been blue. But he's changed his spine color before, like in Godzilla 2000 and Mega Gears. He's been basically like purple where he had orange breath. Now, I'm pretty sure there's a good explanation for it because he's evolved, and there's some sort of like graph I saw where it shows like a radiation level colors like show how they increase in like power, where it's like orange is kind of weaker, and then with blue it's like stronger, which is why Godzilla always breathes, shoots out like blue atomic breath, and then the highest color is pretty much pink. So that's probably the reason for why Godzilla was pink. And I guess I should also touch upon the other controversy of how Godzilla and Kong are running. Now I can understand of how like it defeats the purpose of like them being giant beasts, and of how they're like slow and limbering. I get that, but I can come up with like two explanations for that, hopefully and probably, where basically I think that with them running at the camera, they didn't want them to actually like slowly run towards the camera, because if they did it realistically, you'd be waiting for them to speed up, being like, come on, speed up, because like obviously certain scenes you'd have to like pick up the speed so that way you can see how they're doing it in like faster motion, kind of like of how a sloth were to, if you were to record it and you would record in fast motion. Or it could be the explanation of how like Hollow Earth has like a different gravity field. Like if you remember in Godzilla vs. Kong, Hollow Earth was like had this weird different gravity terrain. So maybe that's the reason of like how they're able to run faster, maybe. But I guess we'll find out. I don't care. I still think that I'm going to enjoy this regardless. It's a Godzilla and Kong film where they fight with each other, and they'll probably fight against each other briefly. I guess we'll see. Now, of course, there's also two new monsters. Mainly this like new orangutan-looking Kong-sized gorilla called Scar King, who I'm assuming is like this leader of like the Hollow Earth Kong apes. They're like beneath the surface before Kong was able to discover them. He looks kind of interesting, maybe a little bit weird and goofy, but I think it'll still be pretty cool regardless. And there's also another one named Shimo, who, I'll be honest, I haven't heard or seen a whole lot except for just a toy of, I believe, her that they're referring to. It seems like it's some sort of like ice kaiju type of thing, and I'll be honest, I try to do the best I can to avoid any kind of spoiler from like, looking at Twitter or Instagram, maybe Facebook, pretty much anything, but mainly Facebook or mainly Twitter, I try to avoid. So basically, I just wanted to like give my own thoughts of like what I'm gonna expect from the movie before I go and see it in a few hours. So I think it'll be pretty entertaining. Now, what to expect from this, I don't know what to expect. Of course, even in the trailer, it showed like of how Kong gets some sort of like Monarch built glove. Now, at first, I thought it was like some sort of like upgrade or like a power up, kind of like a weird Infinity Gauntlet type of thing. But I want to say it's probably like some sort of like support. Maybe he got injured and this is like a cast for him. Maybe I'm not entirely sure what it is, to be honest. And there's probably a good reason for why and how Godzilla was evolved. It looks like he's like surrounded by either ice or crystals. Maybe it's like some sort of like thing of like Super Godzilla, like from the Super Nintendo game, or maybe it's like how Space Godzilla could be in there. I don't think he'll be in there. Now, will I expect there to be any other monsters in the movie besides like Godzilla, Kong, Shimo, Scar King, or even this little mini Kong called Tsuko? I don't know exactly. The toy line also gave us a mini Titanus Doug, which is like a little lizard. You'd seen him in the previous movie. And I don't know who else would be there. It would be cool if they brought back someone like, Rodan or Mothra, because, like, if we're being honest, we haven't seen those guys ever since King of the Monsters, especially with, like, all the other ones, like Behemoth or Skyla, or some of the other ones. So, I guess we'll just have to see. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what to expect. I'm really pumped up for it, really hyped, really excited. So, hopefully it'll be, like, absolutely fantastic. So, I guess we'll just have to see. So, um, I can't really think of anything else that I would want to say. So I think what I'll do at this exact moment is basically like pause the recording for the moment. Then after I go and see the movie, then I'll give my thoughts. It'll probably be uh, with spoilers. So for anyone who does not want to hear any spoilers, you'll have to avoid the rest of this episode until you've gone out and seen it yourself, because it just makes sense for me to have to spoil something like this because, like, it's a Godzilla movie and a Kong movie. I have to talk about it. Obviously, I'm going to be, like, so hyped after seeing it. Now, it was also kind of weird, too, because, when there were talks about a possible sequel after Godzilla vs. Kong, I kept hearing all these rumors of, like, it's going to be a Kong solo movie or it's going to be a remake of Son of Kong or something like that. But then surprisingly, it wasn't a solo Kong movie. But I still would have been fine with a solo Kong movie regardless. But I think it just makes sense to have, like, an actual sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong with them again. And the cool thing about it has the director Adam Wingard, who's back at it again. So I've seen lots of good things on it too. Some really good opinions on it, of how, like, it's like a good tribute to the Showa era, or how, like, this person directed a WWE movie or something like that. And the other cool thing of how, like, I read something to the effect of, like, there's going to be, like, 6 or 7 minutes of, like, uninterrupted monster fighting, which is awesome. So, I can't wait to see this movie. I'm very pumped up, very excited. So, I'll pause the recording for now, and I'll see you guys, hopefully, in a little bit. Wow, okay. Okay, so I just got back from watching Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire, and wow, that was absolutely incredible. I there's just, like, I don't know how to describe it really. It's like there was, like, so much that happened. There's, like, so much that went on throughout that entire movie. It's like, I don't know. It's, like, so hard to describe. So again, I feel like I'll have to spoil this movie. So sorry for anybody listening. If you haven't seen the movie, go out and watch it. And just in case, watch the previous movie of Godzilla vs. Kong. Just in case you need some, like, continuity, and filler to kind of be like, oh yeah, this is what happened in this movie and all that stuff. So basically, what happened in this movie was that, Kong was trying to explore more of Hollow Earth, since this was, like, his new home, basically. And so he was discovering all these, like, he was basically, alone, which made him pretty sad, obviously, because, throughout, like, any of the Kong movies, he was always pretty much just by himself most of the time. Not in every movie, but most of the time. So basically, he was just basically all alone, and he wanted to find his own kind, other Kongs, basically, other giant apes. So eventually, he discovered that apparently there was a deeper, how would I describe this? A deeper hollow Earth facility, basically like an ancient tribe, I guess you could say. But basically, he discovered where there were other Kongs, basically other of his kind were just living in an ancient looking facility, or whatever you want to call it. And apparently there was, like, this, this leader of all these apes called Scar King, which was basically this, like, King Louie from the Jungle Book mixed with a really angry, pissed off orangutan with a basically what the toy line calls it, the whiplash, basically, where he had, like, a thing of bones he used as a whip. And he's obviously he's a bit of a cliche kind of villain, like just an evil ape that you would see from like the Planet of the Apes movies or something like that. But he was like downright nasty. He was like he didn't even care. He was kind of like how I feel like the Emperor from Star Wars would be, where he like kind of kills his own kind or just like doesn't even care. Basically, he's just like, look, I'm the ruler, yada yada. So it's kind of interesting. Obviously, and then like the human characters, there's a couple that returned from the previous movie. It just feels kind of weird to me of how Millie Bobby Brown was not in this because she was in the previous two movies, but it makes sense just because she's probably in the middle of filming Stranger Things 5. But anyway, so with this, seeing a couple of the characters from the previous movie in there, I thought it was pretty cool to see them back. And then eventually they discovered that like Gia, who was the deaf kid in the previous movie, who had a strong connection with Kong, is that felt like she wasn't blending in exactly, like she didn't belong to like how normal Earth was. I guess she wanted to be with her own kind, like her own people, but they were wiped out, obviously. So eventually, when Kong discovered like the what was even more below Hollow Earth, I don't even know what you would call it. They did give it a name. I just forgot what the name of it was. Basically, like telling the whole story of that Scar King was basically like a false king. So Godzilla, from like way back when, was like, you're gonna stay down here, yada yada, and all that stuff. And there was also basically, I guess, what you would call as a servant or pet, or a servant pet of a frostbite type of monster called Shimo, which she's basically like this white and surprisingly a lot larger than Godzilla, monster that's like kind of formed up of crystals and basically can like shoot out a frostbite blast, which honestly is actually pretty cool. I can't really think of a whole lot of kaiju that like do like an ice projectile type of attack. Honestly, there's like maybe like some Ultraman monsters that kind of do something like that. I've seen, I think, maybe a couple that do that, but I don't think I've fully seen anything like that before in any of the Godzilla movies. Unless it was just like a weapon machinery, really. I guess Kiryu from, or Mechagodzilla 3 from, Tokyo SOS or Against Mechagodzilla kind of had something like that, but I'm talking like an actual like monster that's able to like morph the stuff up, not like an actual machine type of thing. So anyway, I thought it was actually kind of interesting. Basically, like Scar King would like control Shimo with basically with like pain. If you see the movie, it'll make sense. And then of course Godzilla's like going like in different places in Europe pretty much, where he's like defeating all these different titans basically, and he's also like getting like some sort of signal from Hollow Earth from like the tribes people who, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, they also like need like one of their kind to like wake up Mothra, and Gia is basically that. So yeah, Mothra came back in this movie, which I'll be honest, I was not expecting Mothra to come back, but I guess it does make sense really, because like I think the last time I watched this movie, I was just like, in King of the Monsters, Rodan and Mothra were in there, but it's like, where are they now? They they didn't come back. Like they kind of hinted like the credits of King of the Monsters that like Mothra had laid an egg or something like that, but I think that was kind of overlooked or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but whatever. It doesn't entirely matter. Basically, there was like, I guess, just another Mothra that happened to be there. So obviously, with like this new threat, Kong tried to lure Godzilla in there, and in the middle of that, Godzilla basically like evolved, upgraded himself to be even more powerful, basically, which was pretty cool. So that explains why he's like all pink, because like he's like absorbing more radiation. So there's that. And basically, they kind of duke it out in Hollow Earth, which is pretty cool. Then, of course, they go to the surface and they just duke it out there. I don't think I'll spoil the rest of the fight there. The fight scenes are just like absolutely entertaining to watch, and just basically even like the interaction between Kong and I guess what you'd call his now adopted son, whose name's Suko. The only reason why I know that is because the toy line explains that his name is Suko. But this little guy obviously like kind of seems just like a little threat almost, but like he was originally with the tribe, but then realized that he kind of grew attached to Kong, being like, what, this strange giant ape with an axe is actually a nice guy. He kind of cares for him a little bit. It's like it takes some character development for Suko to grow on Kong, being like, what, he's not a threat. He's not that much of a bad guy like Scar King is. He's actually kind of nice. So it's kind of nice. He's still like a little delinquent though, really, and it was so funny the way his first interaction was with with Kong. So you definitely need to see that. And then of course with like Kong trying to tell Godzilla, be like, hey, you need to go down to the Hollow Earth with me to defeat these two things. It was kind of amusing at first, just to be like Kong was like using, and that's the other thing I did like about this movie was that they definitely treated the apes like actual like real life apes and simians, basically, of how like they're able to express body language. And I did like that. They didn't necessarily need to roar or growl too much. They were able to use their hands or anything like that. And yes, even Kong gets to do a little bit of sign language, which is pretty cool. I'll be honest. It's like, yeah, this movie is definitely like really really cheesy and has like a whole era of like the Showa era of the Godzilla universe in there, and it definitely shows, but it's in a really good way. So I can definitely say that I absolutely enjoy this movie. Now, did I enjoy it more than the last movie? I'll be honest, I don't really know. I'd say they're both equally entertaining and equally on the same level. I mean, Adam Wingard was the director of this and the last movie, so it only makes sense. So I'll be completely honest. I think I enjoyed both of them equally, just because they're it's a sequel to the last one pretty much. They're both together again. I think it was just an entertaining popcorn flick to just see with your buddies and just like have some laughs a couple times and just enjoy the monster action. It was just a blast. I don't know what else to say about it other than I thought it was like really really good. Now, were there any things that I can improve on it? I don't think so, really. Maybe, obviously, this is one of those movies where you would have to, like, turn your brain off and, like, have the whole sense of reality just gone out the window. Like, obviously, the 2014 Godzilla movie, the one that started this whole Monsterverse, basically, took itself as the most realistic as possible. But if if you hold that and think that, oh, this needs to be super realistic, just like the first one, you're probably not going to enjoy it too much. This is just one of those things where like all reality is just completely gone. It's just a fantasy film that you just need to enjoy, and that's all this is. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, were there any things that I would change? I don't know necessarily. Again, I understand of how like people may not have liked Godzilla's new evolved design. I think it was fine because it makes sense. He needs to be upgraded yet again, like more evolved in order to basically stand up against these guys. So I think that was kind of interesting. But I don't necessarily know what I would change. I guess maybe Scar King a little bit because like he was a bit of a somewhat cliche type of character in a way. But other than that, there's not a whole lot else I could say about it. So yeah, but I definitely thoroughly enjoyed this movie. So yeah, if you guys are like listening to this and you haven't even watched the movie, what are you doing with your life? Like seriously, you really need to go out and watch this movie. Like, I'm sorry, but like I've been a Godzilla and even a Kong fan basically throughout my entire life, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now I guess the other thing is like will this franchise continue? Because obviously there's the whole thing of like, well, obviously a lot of people demanded a sequel from the previous movie to happen. So it just like makes you think that, well, where else could they go from there? Like, how would they continue? Well, I guess I could think that maybe Kong. This would definitely be like of how Kong could like expand upon the whole. Maybe there's more to Hollow Earth, but I think we've literally like reached the depths of like how deep you can get into the Earth. To be honest, but I'm not exactly sure like how they could like continue the franchise. Like maybe they could do a little bit of things with Godzilla. They could probably do a lot more with Kong because it seems as there's like quite a lot to explore there. But I'm not entirely sure what else you could do with the franchise or how else you could expand it. What I would do personally, I think that you could like, and again, it's a far fetched idea, and I know a lot of people would like it. But hey, Adam Wingard, if you're listening to this or whoever is who's into these movies, I would really like there to be a a chance for there to be more copyrighted like monsters in there. Like obviously Gamera, the giant flying turtle, Gamera, would be amazing to have in the Monsterverse. People would love that. I mean, like, people would eat that up. Like, seriously, any fan community from all over the world would eat that up. Godzilla, Kong, and Gamera fighting, like, this huge threat. I think it would make a lot of sense if Destroya was, like, the final monster who would literally destroy the entire world, even worse than Ghidorah. And basically, like, be like the biggest threat possible. So they would need Godzilla, Kong, and Gamera, and maybe a few other monsters, maybe like Rodan and Mothra, and maybe if they brought Anguirus in there or something like that. I don't know, but I think that it would be really cool for them to bring those guys back, really, or basically, or bring certain characters back, like mainly Rodan, and like maybe a couple human characters. I don't know, and then obviously some like other Titans. Now, maybe you could also explore in the realm of aliens coming back. Like Ghidorah was the only extraterrestrial monster in there, because like Ghidorah has always been known to be an alien dragon, three-headed dragon, basically. Not all the time, but most of the time in any of his appearances. Now I feel like maybe putting Gigan in there would be kind of interesting, but at the same time, it's like, well, an alien invasion in the Monsterverse, why not? It's like whatever. It's basically like in the realm of Avengers, like 2012 Avengers quality in a way. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed it. I think that, well, actually, I don't even know. I just thought like, what would the original creators of Godzilla think if they saw this movie today? It's like, would they frown upon it because obviously nothing's like practical, because obviously back in the day, using guys in rubber suits and practical buildings for special effects were, the big thing back in the day. It was the most convincing way you can make stuff look realistic. Or would they be amazed just being like, wow, this is how technology looks, and it looks amazing? I don't know. And of course, there's all like this whole thing where it's like, oh, this movie's in the lingering shadow of Godzilla -1, because it's like, yeah, here's the thing: Godzilla -1 was meant to be more of a dramatic take, and I like it for that. This was just meant to be an entertaining movie about monster fights. So just shut up and just enjoy the movie. That's all I can say about it. Just turn your brain off, shut your lips, watch it. That's all I can say. So yes, I think I really fully enjoyed it. Now, should I think that the Monsterverse should continue? I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure if it should or if it shouldn't. I think it would be cool if it kept going on the way it did. I mean, technically, I guess you could say it kind of is, because like the freaking Monarch Legacy of Monsters show is still like gonna declare a second season in the works or something like that. It's like, okay, good for them. I guess, whatever. But if they were to continue the movies, sure, why not? I definitely feel like there's nowhere else to go, honestly, because it's like, where else can you go from this? Because it's like, I don't know what else you could do from this, because it definitely felt like it officially was the last one. Like, obviously, with the previous one, it hinted at, or didn't, well, actually, no, it didn't really hint at anything, really. It just ended, basically, showing that Kong has a new home, and he feels like he belongs, and now he's, like, more, not exactly in captive, but basically more safe in this world, basically. It just seems like it's more where he belongs. Now with this, there's probably a good small handful of possibilities of maybe expanding upon it, but I don't know what that would be. So I guess we'll just have to find out. If you guys enjoyed this movie, let me know what you guys thought. Like, give me like, if this is on YouTube, just like hit it in the comments. Give me your thoughts on what you thought of this movie, like what you liked, what you didn't like, what you thought of the new kaiju that was in there, what you think that, how the Monsterverse could expand. Or if you want to keep this conversation going, just follow me on Twitter at BenWalker2001. I'm not calling it X, because honestly, X is a little bit dumb. Just call it Twitter. I call it Twitter. You tweet stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Just follow me on there. You can follow me on that. And thanks so much for watching. If you listen to this entire episode without watching the movie and listen to a whole bunch of spoilers, I pity you. I pity the fool. Now, anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the next kaiju-related review or whatever. All right, thanks everybody for listening. See you.